Chapter 20, Volume 2, Idolatry. It was now already 2 whole months since the pageant, and the ebbings and flowings of Glastonbury lives were proceeding under a scorching mid-August sun. It was a Saturday afternoon, and resting against the warm bank of a high hawthorn hedge, John and Mary Crow were watching the tall, pale gold stalks of a ripe cornfield over against Bulwark's Lane leading to Bushycombe. The girls wore a cream-colored frock covered with little light green spots, like the spots upon the inside wing of the butterfly called the green-veined white. She had on black stockings and very thin shoes, and as she lay between the golden wheat stalks and the tall hedge grasses, she allowed one of her outstretched hands to caress the cloudy pink blossoms of a tuft of fumitory. Her white straw hat lay on the ground beside her feet, upside down, and into the place where her head would naturally have been. John was now, with meticulous care, constructing an imaginary thrush nest out of twisted blades of grass and bits of rubble. Her face was averted from his as she lay on her side, but, as they both rested on their elbows, John would vary his preoccupation with her upturned hat by allowing his long, nervous fingers alternately to rumple up and restraighten that green-spotted frock, so warm, as was the form beneath it, in the glowing afternoon sun. The girl's whole being responded to these satyrish caresses with a luxurious and delicious contentment of mind and body, such as she had not known for many a long month. She had been married now to John for exactly 2 days, and she had at last persuaded, or believed she had persuaded, Miss Drew to allow her to live with him in that Northlode road, while she continued to spend the bulk of each day in her old employment as the lady's companion. They had not yet had their first nights together, but ever since they had been married, secretly but not so surreptitiously, by Matt Decker in St. John's Church, the unbedded bride had been transferring her clothes and other private belongings to this happy retreat, the first menage that she could call her own. Whether it would be tonight that the grand move would be made, or tomorrow, Sunday night, she was not quite sure. She had extracted a sort of reluctant half-promise from Miss Drew that it should be tonight, but on that issue she was prepared to be flexible if, when it came to the point, it had to be tomorrow instead. John also was happier than he had been for months, probably as happy as he had ever been since the day on the Northwold Big River. This girl by his side seemed on that warm August afternoon to satisfy his whole nature in a way that he had more than once doubted it ever could be satisfied. What a delicious mystery, frond leaf beneath frond leaf, shell whorl beneath shell whorl, calyx beneath calyx, the identity of a girl was. It seemed to John, as he followed with his electric fingers the delicate curves of his body lying by its side, and as he threw out one trifling remark after another, just to hear her voice, just to note what such a being would say, or wouldn't say, that the renunciation of all this made by Sam Decker was a monstrous outrage upon life. I'd set Mary at him, he thought to himself, and then he thought, no, he won't listen to any girl. I must fight it out with him myself. It's mad what he's doing. The fellow's worse than a murderer. He's got the uttermost mystery of mysteries under his fingertips. Instead of worshipping it, he's starving it to death. He had a delicious opportunity for enjoying Mary at this moment, with his most intense idolatry and concentrated fetish worship. For her being turned to him, she could not distract him by any look. Both her words and her silences, as he caressed them now, along with the rest, seemed to have about them the very lines and curves of this form that he found so intensely appealing. What is it, he thought to himself, as he contemplated her long, slim legs in their black stockings? What is it about a girl's shape that excites a person so? The girl seemed in such a dreamy and passive state that just then that she appeared ready to yield to the least pressure of the hands that caressed her. John took advantage of this to make her lie prone on her face, where she seemed perfectly content to stay quite motionless, inhaling the sun-warm aromatic smells of those infinitesimal plants, such as tiny yellow pansies, that seemed to love in wheat fields better than any other place, and idly pushing at the brim of her grass-filled hat with the tip of her shoes. He began strewing her prone limbs now with little bits of grass taken from the bird's nest he had made. Holding these grasses in the air above her, he let them fall down in showers, and it pleased him to watch which of them would find rest upon her and which would drift aside into the hedge weeds, caught by some scarce perceptible breath of the soft southerly wind. What is it about the way they are made? He asked himself again. It seemed to him that the most exquisite thrill came to him, the thrill that was at once most satyrish and most infinitely tender, from the feeling of the piquancy of such desirable limbs being inseparably united to a conscious mind, a mind that bore about with it, wherever it went, the sweet provocative burden. But it's only, he thought to himself as he stopped strewing her with grass and began smoothing down the cream-colored frock, because it's Mary. If this were another girl, instead of what I feel I should feel, either savage lust or furious disgust, God, I would not stay here a second with another girl. Except, of course, Lisette, but that's different. I'd hate for another girl to think to herself, I've got him, he likes me. I'd hate for another girl to have that kind of triumph. The maliciousness he now began to feel towards this imaginary other one drew to itself all that natural loathing of the opposite sex felt in certain moods by both men and women. But such was John's nature that he could take this repulsion, this sex-loathing, which is far more powerful and deep-rooted feeling than any more mere sex-hatred, and bury it into the ground. Bury it as a dog might bury a piece of offal, knowing that it, in his maliciousness or his roguery required it, he could dig it up. The chances are that, for pure unmitigated lechery, John Crow ranked highest among the whole population of Glastonbury. Others might have far more powerful erotic sensations, but for pure delight derived from lust, John would, with one exception, have carried away the palm. This exception was Angela Beer, the chaste-looking, unapproachable daughter of old lawyer Beer. Angela lived for nothing else but for erotic dreaming. Her mind by night and day was a temple full of chain-swung censers to the Cyprian, and in this temple was a sacred niche that was occupied by many different figures, but only by one figure at a time. At present the niche was occupied by the figure of Persephone, and it was before the figure of Persephone that Angela prostrated herself, exactly in the same way that John prostrated himself before Mary. Between the pleasure that Angela was enjoying at this very minute of time, as she sat at her easel, for she dabbled in watercolors, sketching among the abbey ruins by calling up Persephone's form, and the pleasure that John derived from the actual presence of Mary, there was no difference at all. Ooh. Above every community, above every town, there were invisible powers hovering, as and interested in the minnows, male and female, swimming about in that particular human aquarium, as Matt Decker was in his fish. It is only a very few human beings, however, in each community who are able to slip out of their skins and share the super mundane observation of themselves. For the most part, the inhabitants of a given locality or aquarium just go blindly on, unconsciously swimming about, following their affairs, obeying their necessities, pursuing the smaller fry, making their weed nests or their mud nurseries. Nor have we any right to assume, rather the contrary, that the few persons who have this power of slipping out of their skins and enjoying these super mundane naturalists are nobler or even wiser than the rest. Very often they are the extreme weaklings, dwellings on the verge of nervous idiocy. In Glastonbury, at this particular epoch, John Crow, Persephone Spear, and that emaciated son of Dickory Cantle, whose wasted legs so troubled Mr. Geard, were probably the only ones who could attain this detached view. And certainly it would be absurd to maintain that any of them was nobler or wiser or nearer the secret of life than Mr. Gerd, for instance, or than Miss Elizabeth Crow, neither of them whom had ever looked down, so to speak, from about their surface of the aquarium. At this particular moment of the 15th of August, that is to say at 9 minutes and 40 seconds past 3 o'clock, had any of these super mundane naturalists been studying the physical and psychic movements of the Glastonbury Aquarium, they would certainly have come to the conclusion that John Crow, contemplating the real figure of Mary toying with the little wild pansies, and Angela Beer, contemplating the imaginary figure of Persephone, first in one aspect and then in another, as she sketched the famous ruin usually known as St. Joseph's Chapel, were the two water creatures whose amorous excitement was most intense. And quite apart from super-mundane observers, it is likely enough that the most desirable of all electric vibrations is just this very sort of erotic desire, neither altogether gratified nor altogether denied. A small red poppy, such as lingers on after their season, with so many other cornfield plants, was dying in front of him, and a great black slug was drawing its slime over the pink pea-like petals of the little rent harrow. But the curious shriveled blackness of the dying poppy, with the strange wet look upon it as it wept in its death, or as it poured forth the most hidden store of all its hoarded nepenthe, for nothing but the voyaging south wind that needed no anodyne or any healing to take and carry away, did not lessen John's emotion. Okay, I don't know what was going on in that paragraph, but I'm going to move on. Into the poppy juices of Black Death's own veins, that perfect sweetness by his side had crept, cozening him, cajoling him, anointing him, with anointment that was like a lethe within lethe, and oblivion within oblivion. The girl's yieldingness and sweetness as he lay there, bathed in that golden sunshine and in those flickering shadows, seemed to extend itself like an eternal kindness and reassurance to everything in life. The little rest harrow seemed indeed to be holding its breath till the black slug passed on its way. But its leaves were sturdy. The slug had eaten only one pea-shaped petal. And lo! In a moment the small, strong plant could breathe again. A scarf of rainbow-glittered slime would wear till nightfall. But even if no dews washed it down, there would probably be rain in a day or two, and naught left of that trail. What a thing that he had found a creature so sweet, so divinely chiseled by the great Pygmalion of the universe. There had been a long epoch in his life All those years in France, though Lisette had been generous and tender, when he would have mocked at the idea of finding such absolute content, such fathomless peace of mind, in idolizing a girl's body. It had nothing to do with Glastonbury, that was certain. No, it was Norfolk they had met, and to Norfolk they would return one day. Well, that's the end of that section for today. Really making quite a dent in this book. It's a little scary. Look at that. Really coming along. Wow. Well, until next time, I'll see you in Glastonbury. Cheers.